Assalamu alaikum. I am Dr. Muhammad Faysal Hawlader, lecturer, Department of Anatomy, Eastern Medical College. Today I am going to discuss about gross anatomy of spinal cord. What do you mean by spinal cord? The lower cylindrical portion of the central nervous system is called spinal cord. We know that central nervous system is consist of brain and spinal cord. The upper expanded portion is brain and lower cylindrical portion of the central nervous system is known as spinal cord. Spinal cord is located within the upper two-thirds of the vertebral canal. The length of the spinal cord is about 45 cm. It extends from foramen magnum to the lower border of the first lumbar vertebra in case of adult. And in case of young child, it is relatively longer and usually ends at the upper border of the third lumbar vertebra. The spinal cord extends in the lower part of the first lumbar vertebra as conus medullaris. Now, what do you mean by conus medullaris? The lower tapering portion of the spinal cord is called conus medullaris. Below the level of conus medullaris, only pyometer is continued as a thin fibrous cord known as filum terminale. Now, what do you mean by filum terminale? Thread-like structures, non-nervous portion of the spinal cord, continuation of the pile sheath is known as filum terminale. The length of filum terminale is about 20 cm. Filum terminale is divisible into two parts, filum terminale externa and filum terminale interna. And filum terminale is attached with the back of the first coccygeal segment. Now, how the position of the spinal cord is maintained? Spinal cord maintains its positions by rostral continuity of spinal cord with the medulla, attachment of the filum terminale with the first coccygeal segment, and attachment of the ligamentum denticulatum. So, spinal cord is maintained its position by attachment of the ligamentum denticulatum, attachment of the filum terminale with the first coccygeal segment, and rostral continuity of the spinal cord with the medulla. Now, what is chorda equina? The bundle of nerve root formed by lumbar 2 to subsequent spinal nerve is known as chorda equina. Again, what is conus medullaris? The lower tapering portion of the spinal cord is known as conus medullaris. What is filum terminale? It is the thread-like structure, non-nervous portion of the spinal cord and continuation of the pile sheath is known as filum terminalis. And what is chorda equina? Bundle of nerve root formed by lumbar 2 to subsequent spinal nerve is known as chorda equina. Spinal cord is nervous tissue and covering of spinal cord is meninges, which is connective tissue. Spinal cord provide attachment to the spinal nerve. There are 31 pairs of spinal nerve: cervical 8, thoracic 12, lumbar 5, sacral 5 and coccygeal 1. Spinal nerve are formed by the union of the ventral and dorsal root of the spinal cord. And spinal nerve are mixed nerve because its ventral root give motor sensation and dorsal root give sensory sensation. Now, enlargement of the spinal cord. There are two enlargement occur in the spinal cord. One in cervical enlargement, another one is lumbosacral enlargement. Cervical enlargement occurs at the level of cervical 4 to thoracic 1 segment of the spinal cord. The ventral rami of this segment of spinal nerve united together to form brachial plexus and which supply the upper limb. And lumbosacral enlargement, which lies at the level of lumbar 1 to sacral 3 segment of spinal cord, which supply the muscle of lower limb. So, there are two enlargement occur in spinal cord. One is cervical enlargement, another is lumbosacral enlargement. And cervical enlargement gives supply to the upper limb and lumbosacral enlargement gives supply the muscle of the lower limb. Structures of spinal cord in cross sections: the inner gray matter and outer white matter. What do you mean by gray matter? A collection of nerve cell body, neuralgia and blood vessel is known as gray matter. And what do you mean by white matter? Collection of bundle of axon, neuroglia and blood vessel is known as white matter. Structures of gray matter. Gray matter is A-shaped and it has two horns, anterior horn and posterior horn. On each side they connected with the gray commissure, and there is a central canal into the middle part of the gray commissure. What is central canal? It is the remnant of the lumen of the neural tube. We know that spinal cord is developed from neural tube, and this central canal is the remnant of the lumen of the neural tube. Now anterior horn. The neuron of anterior horn are multipolar in nature, and there is some large and some small neuron present in anterior horn. Among them, large neurons are alpha motor neurons and they innervate the skeletal muscle, and small size neurons are gamma motor neuron. They innervate the small neuromuscular spindle. Both small size and large size neurons are multipolar in nature. In whole length of spinal cord, we found anterior horn and posterior horn, but in some region we also found lateral horn. And lateral horn is present in between thoracic 1 to lumbar 2 segment of the spinal cord and sacral 2 to sacral 4 segment of the spinal cord. And the neuron of anterior horn divided into three groups: medial groove, central groove and lateral groove. The medial groove, the neuron of medial groove innervates the skeletal muscle of neck and trunk, that means intercostal and intra-abdominal muscle. And the neuron of central groove, and they form a nucleus in cervical region by cervical 3, 4, 5 segment known as phrenic nucleus, and they supply the diaphragm. They also form a accessory nucleus by cervical 1 to cervical 5 segment, and they supply the sternocleidomastoid and trapezius muscle. And the lateral groove innervates the muscle of the limb. So the neuron of anterior horn is divided into three parts or three grooves: medial groove, central groove and lateral groove. And medial grooves innervate the skeletal muscle of neck and trunk, and central groove is created two nucleus. One is phrenic nucleus and another is accessory nucleus, and this phrenic nucleus is supply the diaphragm, and the accessory nucleus is supply the sternocleidomastoid and trapezius muscle. And lateral groove, it innervates the muscle of the limb. Now posterior horn, and this posterior horn contains sensory neuron and divided into four grooves. They are substantia gelatinosa, nucleus prophius, nucleus dorsalis and visceral afferent nucleus. Substantia gelatinosa carries the faint touch and temperature, that means exteroceptive sensation, and nucleus prophius carries proprioceptive sensation, that means muscle and joint sense, and nucleus dorsalis also carries the proprioceptive sensation, and visceral afferent nucleus carries sensation of touch, pain and temperature from viscera. So the posterior horn contains sensory neuron and divided into four grooves: the substantia gelatinosa, which is carry the exteroceptive sensation, that means pain, touch and temperature, and nucleus prophius, which is carries proprioceptive sensation and nucleus dorsalis also carries proprioceptive sensation, and visceral efferent nucleus is also carries the touch, pain, temperature from viscera.